This is Justin Domino, and you are listening to the Stand Firm podcast, where we're talking about all things faith, Bible, and culture, and how to stand firm in a world that makes it difficult to do so. Let's dive in together. All right, this is the episode that I think people will click on the fastest because it's going to be maybe the most controversial, but not controversial because of what we're about to talk about. I think controversial, or I should say not controversial based on what we're actually going to say, but definitely controversial based on the topics themselves. But they're like the hottest topics right now, the biggest deal. And I think what we have to do as pastors, what we have to do as Christian leaders is not just say, well, here's what we think, but we have to say, how do we give our people a biblical framework for how we look at things like immigration and things like SNAP and food assistance programs, and how do we think about this biblically? Because what I think is happening is a lot of people have their political opinions, and then people have their religious beliefs or lack of, and then we have to figure out how do we marry these two. And I think one of the biggest things that people have realized over the past couple of years is we actually can't separate religion and politics, that they do go hand in hand. They do feed off one another. And I think our religion should inform our politics. I think what happens is our politics is now informing our religion, which is where we get into a huge mess. But here with Wendy Gordy, really excited about this because I think what is going to happen is we're going to allow our people to really think biblically through how do we think about immigration and how do we think about welfare assistance programs and all these things. So I have some notes here we're going to walk through, but I just want to get your opening thoughts on when it comes to immigration, when it comes to food assistance programs, when it comes to the current state of politics in our country. What is your opening reaction to oh man, I'm a believer and this is how I think, or what should be the Christians stand, or not, maybe not the Christians. What's your state of being as you think about politics in America with these hot topics? I know that was a huge everywhere, all over the board, opening question, but yeah, opening reaction.
It's good. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? I've lived through a few decades of political debates. I think America's in a crazy stage right now, but I don't think it's ever been the craziest. If you look back at history and you go way back, you hear that there were brawls at debates and it's been nuts. But I do feel like believers have blurred the line more and more and more with what you said, where the political lines, be it red or blue or white, wherever you stand, are the one dictating what God's word says. We've blurred it. And whether we have meant to do that or not, we're there. And so the voice of the church and the voice of God's truth has to start to emerge as the voice that is the loudest right now. Because otherwise we are just going to spiral more and more out of control. And so I definitely have thoughts and beliefs, but as you said, I'm excited to get into God's design and framework because it's all spelled out right there for us as believers, how we are to walk in this policy of immigration and how to treat one another and where respect is supposed to be and what that looks like. So,
Let's do this. Let's break up this episode into two different parts. We're going to start with immigration. We'll move on to the SNAP and food assistance programs. We'll kind of break it off into two sections. Now, saying that, I think what we're going to find is there's going to be unifying principles for where we land in both of those conversations. But let's start off with immigration. So in your mind, what is the number one problem that Christians are struggling with right now when it comes to thinking through immigration?
I think right now, I'm going to speak for myself.
Yeah. So, I would prefer if you speak for other people and put words in their mouth. But
I also can do that. Ask my family. They'll tell you exactly how they should think and feel. But for myself, right, I am a girl who appreciates that there is the rule of law. I don't like chaos. I don't like confusion. I think a country has the right to defend its borders. I think we have a right as a country to know who's coming into our country. Just like my home. My doors aren't open in the middle of the night for anybody to come into. With that said, I think we have not come up with a great system as a country. Just speaking for the United States. I don't think we've come up with a great system of how to help people from other countries, whether they're coming here as refugees or asylum or whatever the need would be. our process, and anybody would tell you that no matter what side of the aisle they're on, it's a mess and it's chaotic and it takes years to gain citizenship. So I think we are just in that stew of chaos as a country when it comes to our immigration. And now we just went through a season, right or wrong, where we had more people than ever statistically enter our country. We don't know everybody who's here. That's just a truth that you can point to many references for.
Is that a problem or not a problem?
It's a problem to not know who is in our country.
Yeah.
Here's where we have to be careful as believers.
Yes.
We don't get to be the person who then starts shooting judgment arrows at everybody we see.
1,000%.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
We are still called to do what God has called us to do, right? Which is show compassion and kindness and love and take care of the poor and the widows. And that's our call as believers. Now,
there's a call to compassion and care towards regardless of status.
Yes.
Yeah. What's their posture? What's the attitude?
Human to human, eyeball to eyeball. Now, listen, hey, as believers, I do think that if you have a gift of being in that political arena or running for the local school board or whatever that might look like for you, we need believers in all areas
For sure.
of life. And so run. I mean, if you've got a platform and you can stand on God's word and do so with truth and kindness and compassion and not craziness, we don't need any more craziness.
The way that I look at it when it comes to specifically immigration is there's both policy and then there's posture. So when it comes to policy, I think with immigration, like a nation has every right, and it should have the right to secure its borders, to know who's coming in, who's going out. That is the literal role of our government, like to keep its citizens safe. I also believe that America was built on immigration, that it's a wonderful thing. When it happens legally, it's like, by all means, I would love to have more people from around the world, whether they're finding refuge here or they're finding like, hey, there's freedom here or there's opportunity. Like you look at New York City, which is a melting pot of different cultures. Now, it has its own problems, but it was built on the backs of Italians and Jewish people and American citizens coming together, building something great. And if you see this all across our nation, we are a nation of immigrants. So I think it's a beautiful thing. It has to happen legally. And this is where obviously the huge breakdown comes. And this is where I think politically a lot of conservatives need to realize that when it comes to immigration, we need to specifically mention illegal immigration. And I think also the liberal side of our country needs to recognize that, they are talking about legal immigration, not illegal immigration. We need to understand where each other's coming from. But a nation has every right to make sure that, hey, our country is safe, protect its own citizens. That's literally the role of the government. The trap that we fall into, I think, and we have to be aware of this, is that when we say we oppose illegal immigration, immediately I think that gets attached to to racism or not wanting people from other nations. That's actually, and that might be the point for some people. Of course, racism still exists. Of course, there's still people who are afraid of the foreigner or whatever. In my heart, it's like, absolutely not. It has nothing to do with it. In fact, so I've shared the story a few times from stage. I don't know if I ever shared it on the podcast, but I was studying abroad in Italy, in Europe for 3 months, and I was a moron. I will just say this. I had zero idea how visas worked. I didn't realize we were on a 90-day visa. And me and my buddy were like, let's backpack for an extra 10 days. And so we spent 10 extra days traveling from Czech Republic to Germany, Austria. It was amazing. We get to the German airport in Munich, and I got berated by immigration. They were like, you cannot do this. You are an illegal. And I'm like, whoa. I had no idea. And I should have known, totally on me. I have never been yelled at so bad in my life. I was like, what are you going to do? Send me home, essentially? And that's what they did.
That's where I want to go.
But I was banned from the European Union for a year.
Wow.
They told me, they stamped my passport, said you cannot come back. They typed into the computer.
I want to see the posters.
I know, I was banned. But it hit me right there. Like, this has nothing to do with where I'm coming from or who I am. This has everything to do with I had zero right to be there. Now, I want to say this with compassion, too, that there are a lot of people who are fleeing their situations and they're looking for a better life. And for whatever reason, whether they came here legally or illegally, I want them to have a better life. At the same time, Romans 13 right? The Apostle Paul talks about this, that God has established governments, and as citizens of a nation, we are commanded to treat that government with respect, to pay our taxes when we're called to pay our taxes, to give honor where we should give honor. So we have to think about it, I think, through two categories of what's legal immigration, which I am all for, and what's illegal immigration, which we have to be incredibly careful about. How do you parse those out in your mind? What are you thinking about as I talk about all this?
Yeah, well, I agree with what you've said. And just to speak to where we are today, I think where there is confusion and divisiveness is because we are in a situation. I like to watch all the news. I love a good debate. I'll watch from all angles. And it's messy right now. And voices are interjecting that have no right to be interjecting right now. It's like a schoolyard fight to me a little bit. There has to be somebody with reason to come in and separate the sides for a minute and be like, here's where we are. We are in a place right now where we are even blurring the lines between illegal coming. I can't go into a country myself right now. It would be illegal for me without a passport or any documents saying that I can enter that country. I don't even have a passport. I should get one. Another podcast.
Government shutdowns.
I wouldn't be allowed. And so that's okay. Right? We've already established that. Our country has the right to say who can come in legally and who cannot come in legally to our country. And we have things set up for refugees and people who need safety and who are coming here to make a better life. All good. But when we opened the door wide open and we let people come in and we don't know who's here, now we've gone to the other extreme where we're treating everybody like a criminal. That's a scary situation to be in too. I don't want bad apples here in our country. None of us do. But because we're trying to correct something that got chaotic, now it's wild, wild west a little bit, and it's all okay, but it's not all okay. So the posture is where we really have to get back to. And I think the church has an opportunity to really say to the body, okay, we know this has been crazy, chaotic. People are here who shouldn't be here. Let's just level-headed, calm, get to the right posture of what God's called us to do. And, the Bible talks about this too. You talked about this in Romans. Peter talks about this, but we are to be praying for those in leadership too. Whether I voted for them or not voted for them, the call is the same. For godly wisdom, for right decisions, humanity to be treated like humanity. And that's where I land. I just think we are in a chaotic stew right now.
But this is, as you say that, this is why I think Christians need to, there needs to be a Christian voice that is talking about this and getting it out. And my whole goal with this podcast was never to be like this famous Christian pastor who has his own podcast. Like, this is actually built for our church and for our local community. That's why we did it. If that happens, great. But it's actually I want our own church to be able to think biblically through this, because our own church is heated about this. Like, if you go into our lobby, there's going to be guys who are talking about immigration. There's going to be people who are talking about SNAP and welfare programs. Like, people are thinking about this. We have to have a Christian voice.
And if we're not rooted in what God's scripture says, we're taking things out of context too. So I've heard it said that, Jesus went illegally. And, Joseph and Mary went illegally.
And that's part of the conversation. You have a bunch of more progressive liberal Christians who are talking about how Jesus was a Palestinian Jew who was illegally immigrating from Egypt. You get the whole argument. Then you have the conservative Christians who are saying the complete opposites on other things. So we're all trying to use our political stances to plop them onto Jesus himself. Because if we can attach ourselves to Jesus, we're good.
We're okay.
We finally won. But going back to the framework I use is we have policies, which we have to realize our government has a responsibility to take care of its citizens. Numbers chapter 34, God establishes borders in Israel and tells them, here's going to be your border for this tribe. Here's going to be your border for that tribe. So borders are not a bad thing. Borders are what nations have to have. At the same time, and you've brought this up a little bit, we have to have a posture as Christians of even if we know or don't know whether somebody is illegal or not legal. And we really have no way to know. We don't know,
right?
And I think this is where we have to check our own hearts, because everything that Jesus establishes in the New Testament, when he says, you have heard that it was said, but I say, he's always referring to the law that was at hand in the Jewish Old Testament Pharisaical law. But then he's saying it's not just about the law, it's actually about your heart, right? So he talks about, you have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. But I say, don't even look at a woman or a man with lust, or you're already committing adultery in your heart. He's taken from action to heart. So we can say, well, my actions are pure, but it's like, well, where's your heart? And on every issue, what I've had to challenge myself on is, okay, I believe these things about immigration policy, that if you want to come here, do it legally. And that's maybe hard for some people, but that is the law, and I think it has to be followed. How am I now viewing or looking at people, whether I know they're illegal or not illegal? So my posture as a Christian person needs to be somebody who sees every single human being with love and dignity and respect, because what is the overarching truth for whether they're illegal or legal is every single human being was created in the image of God. And if you're a conservative, you have zero right to take that or to tarnish that. If you're a liberal progressive, you have zero right to take that or to tarnish that. Every single person. So we have to look at this, I think, both through policy of what governments need to do. And I love what you brought up about, like, I don't even do that with my own house. In fact, I would challenge everybody listening to this. Like, when you open the door, there's a knock on your door, which nobody knocks on doors anymore, but you open your door to somebody who's coming over, and what do? Do you open it, which if you're listening to this, not on camera, but do you open it like wide open so there's a clear path inside your house? Nobody does that. What do? If you either like stick your head out the door a little bit, or you actually step outside to talk to the person. Why? You are guarding your home, whether you even realize it or not. It's second nature to protect yourself, your family, and whatever belongs to you. And I think if you move that same analogy to our nation, like, that is what our borders are for. We're not saying you're a criminal. We don't even know who you are, but it's like, we're establishing borders. We have to protect our citizens. But we have to watch ourselves that we don't see every brown person or everybody that looks like they might not be from here as like, ooh, are they illegal? Are they legal? We have to really be careful. It's also a problem, like, well, you talked about it, like, hey, the last couple of years, there's so many immigrants, or so many illegal immigrants that were allowed in. So it's like, we have to check our posture, but also this problem was created. Like, now we do need to take responsibility. But the overarching principle is that we need to treat every human being with love and dignity and respect. And how that goes into policy is going to be different, but our posture as believers is, we are not going to be racist towards people. We are not going to speak poorly against them, but we are going to say our nation needs laws, and that's okay. You talk about law and chaos. Like, if our government just allows everything to happen, it's going to be pure chaos. And we've seen that in specific cities all around our nation. So I'm going to wrap up so we can get to SNAP and food assistance programs. But I think we have to think about this both logically and compassionately. And I think what conservatives do really well is, I think, very logically of like, no, of course the government needs rules. The hammer. What liberals do very well is, I think, very compassionately. And I think what God wants us to do is to kind of marry both. We need to have good policies and also a lot of compassion for people. And I'm also not saying that like it's like this third way. I do think we need to establish ourselves politically a little bit and decide what we are actually convicted about. But anyways, let's move on to SNAP and to food assistance programs. What's been brewing in your mind? So the government's been shut down. As of the time of this recording, it is still shut down. And
it's a record shutdown.
It's crazy.
Historical.
So, and one of the things that's been, I wouldn't say cut, it's been defunded through the government shutdown, is they're not allowing funds to go to SNAP and other food assistance programs. So now all these people who are on EBT and these food assistance programs, it's all not necessarily run out, it's locked down, so they can't have it. So what's your opening thoughts? Well,
a couple things. We need to be a people who are generous and help people in need. I was astounded at the numbers. However, there are $9 billion that's going out in SNAP
a month.
Crazy numbers. For the people who are on that. And then the reserve was like half of that was in the reserves. And so I'm going to be very honest. I listened to a radio show the other day, and a gentleman called, so it was all public, and he said his family makes over $200,000, and they were on this, and I had to check my heart. They were on SNAP. That's what they're talking about. And I had to check my heart, if I'm being very honest. Like, To me, that's a lot of money to make, and to have that assistance still needed.
Yeah, that's only what I make in a month. That's insane. I'm kidding.
So I had to have a heart check, because my first thought was like, wow, how did we get to $9 billion if people, we have been in need in our family, and God has provided so graciously through the church, through his body. We need to help people via these programs. I think these are good programs. I also think that we can take advantage of any good program.
Yeah.
And so the answer is not, well, let's stop it all. And then, because I kind of think that's the voice right now, a little
For
bit.
sure.
Let's stop it all. I know it's the government shutdown. We're not, but let's weed out the, people who don't really need it. And again, that's not my call as Wendy. That's where my heart had to be checked.
I think there's going to be some shared principles between immigration and SNAP. What we just talked about is going to be in this conversation too.
Right.
Because I had the same thing. So I didn't hear that radio conversation. But what I did see the other day is this woman on video doing some selfie video on TikTok or whatever. And she was like, my family has needed this. We've been on this for 30 years. And like, this is unbelievable. And I was like, 30 years. Now, I don't know her story. Maybe there's disability. That could be. But my first gut reaction is, how in the world are people on this for 30 years? It can't be. That's not what the system is built for. At least it can't be what the system is built for. And that's where I think, again, as Christians, we have to think about this not secularly. We have to think about this not what we think about. Like, we have to think about this biblically.
That was
what does
the
Bible
gut check,
teach?
heart check.
Yes. What does the Bible teach? So let's go through this a little bit. Again, I have notes. I don't know if you do, but
nope.
When it comes to government food assistance programs like SNAP, I think I am super, super thankful to live in a country that has these social safety nets that if I become unemployed and I didn't expect it, I'm so thankful that I have a nation that says like, hey, here's some assistance while you get back on your feet. I think that's an absolute good thing. And that might rub some of my, further right conservative people a little the wrong way, but that's what I think. I think it's a great thing. The government should take care of its people. I also think that what is taught in the Old Testament and New Testament is essentially, if you don't work, you don't eat. And I don't want to sound discompassionate or uncompassionate, whatever the word is there. But there's a truth that the Apostle Paul teaches consistently throughout the New Testament, that if you do not provide for your family, he says that you are worse than an unbeliever. Like, there is a heavy responsibility to be able to take care of yourself and feed your family without relying on government subsidies for longer than a short period of time. So I think that what the Bible teaches as its underlying principle is that if you are committing to work, you should be able to take care of yourself, and you shouldn't be somebody who isn't committing yourself to work and is relying on whether it's somebody else or the government. Now, we see this. We have a community care program in our church that gives away, I think last year we gave away like $93,000 to help people pay mortgages, electric bills, groceries, all that kind of stuff. We've helped a lot of people. Now, this program has been open for like 20 years or so since the existence of our church, and every community care director that we've had has said the same thing. Man, it's such a blessing to help all these people. But is it okay to say no because this specific person, I feel like they're gaming the system a little bit and they don't actually need our help? And we've always had to have that like, okay, yeah, I think you're right. And it sounds terrible to have to say it. It's a horrible feeling to have to like work through this problem. But there are people who do take advantage of systems that are supposed to be there in times of crisis and emergency. What are your thoughts on how do we parse this out?
Yeah, and I think that's where the believer has to be careful, because there's always people who take advantage of a system, whatever that system is, and it ruins it for the rest, right? Simple analogy, you're in the classroom, the teacher goes off on 90% of the kids who are well-behaved because of the 10% who are driving them crazy, and you sit there and listen through it. So believers, we've got to check our heart. We've got to be careful. Listen, our call is still to be generous and compassionate and go above and beyond what the secular world does. And I am appreciative of a government that has these programs and provides that. I think it's a mindset, however. I think the church can be a strong voice. And also, I wish the church could be the bigger thing that provides in these ways instead of our government. Like, I'm grateful that our government's there, but I think we can rely on our government too much sometimes. And therefore, that's how I think we lend ourselves to where the political voice is stronger than the biblical voice, because we do depend on our government so much. Instead of I'm just talking to believers, depend on God first. Let him provide your needs. The body comes along. Let us provide, be generous. Because I do think that there are people 30 years or whatnot, we still have to check our heart, but how can we come in and be better at being like, okay, it's a different mindset. We talk about the working poor, and that is sad to me. There are families working hard, but not getting the wages, one that either they deserve and they can't afford housing. There's so much going on. We need people with common sense, people who are biblically aligned to enter into these arenas, I think, in our local government and help figure out how we can all help families afford housing. I think there's a lot of families who want to be able to provide for their families without government assistance.
Well, that's where, we're talking about this in a 30-minute episode. There are so many like gray areas. And it's like, oh, did you think about that? Of course. We're speaking in overarching, like general principle-based things. Because I'm listening to this podcast the other day, and it's a bunch of Christian pastors talking about this very thing. And there was one family that this pastor knew, and he said, if I take the raise that I'm being offered at work, I lose my SNAP benefits, which is a good thing, right? It's like, now you're making more money so you can afford this. But he said it's not enough to cover what we were getting on SNAP. So if I take this raise, we're actually in a worse position because they're taking away the benefits, but I have less actual money. So now I, again, cannot afford food, but that's the threshold. If I cross this threshold, I lose the benefits. So he's in this position like, I don't feel like I can take this raise, can't take this promotion because I'll actually have less money. And this is where there is no perfect system other than like, I think, keep working hard and trying to make more so you can provide. But families do get into this trap of like, the system it's not necessarily designed in such a perfect way that fully understands every situation. And so that's why, this conversation isn't going to get into the nitty gritty technical things.
But to say that, I think as believers, we have to be careful. We had 4 kids in 5 years. They went through school. We were on that line. There was back then it was the free meals or whatever, if your wages were such. We always made like 1,000 more than qualified for that.
Which is like a terrible spot to be.
It is. So then we were the family who was 30 days late with the food bill because we had to pay it out of pocket, even though, and then our kids wouldn't get back in that day. Kids' trays got dumped. So our kids went through that, embarrassing, called out. So here's where I think believers, whatever we think, get involved in the ring. If we have ideas to bring to the table in our local government or whatever we should run for, bring godly wisdom to that. But we're called, I believe, as a body and a church to provide, to help where we can, bring meals, supply food. If God's given us an abundance of financial resources, give to the families we know or whatever it is. I think that's the call. And I'm glad, I'll say this, with SNAP, it used to be the day where you had to lick the stamps and everybody knew what you were doing. You were called out. You were judged. It was
like
embarrassing.
It,
yes. So wrong. So I'm grateful that we've gotten at least to a place where I don't know who's using SNAP benefits. I don't know who's doing what. We're just people trying to figure out this life together, and we kind of need each other, and we need to be spurring one another on and cheering each other and being like, you got this. And so I just, at the end of the day, that was my heart check when I listened to the story on the radio. My first thing was like, what? You make like way more than us, and we're just trying to figure this out. So regardless, I had to let that go captive because it could have dwelled there and been like, whoa, turn to bitterness, turn to all these things, where I was just like, okay, Lord, here's where my story is. Here's what you provided for us. What do you want us to be doing with that? And how do we move forward?
I love what you said, because this is the time when SNAP benefits are not happening. This is the time for the church to step up and be generous. And I'll say this, it's a strong call. I also see it happening in a lot of ways. And what you said is, I wish the the churches could step in like in a higher place than the government. I'm right there with you. I don't know if it's possible because of how large we are, but every pastor and church that I follow on social media, sermons, whatever, they're all setting up, whether they're in-house food pantries for people locally, or they're giving money like hand over fist to the people who are doing the work. And I think when crisis like this happens, a lot of secular progressive people are like, well, where's the church? And it's like, the church is actually everywhere right now, like taking care of this problem. If you look at church history and even like our own nation's history, Christians are the most generous demographic of any other people group. We give hand over fist billions of dollars to different causes every single year. So very generous. Go back to like the very earlier stages of after Jesus died, resurrected, the church is forming. Churches started the very first hospital, like the modern hospital system we have today was started by Christians. So I think Christians have stepped up. Now, I think we need to step up more and also continue, just like the immigration conversation. There's one thing to have policy, right? We need to have social safety nets. We also don't want those to be abused. So we have to have policy, but also what is our posture as believers? Like our call as believers is to make sure that we don't have, I think, negative feelings of judgment towards people who might be on this system. Now, it's hard when you're on radio and you hear this guy making $200,000 and I'm on a podcast hearing about this, other guys. So it's hard. And that's where it's always hard, I think, to have our hearts in check. But there's policy and there's posture. And I would encourage every single believer in our church and nationally to have this, like, okay, I also, like, we understand that the government has a role, but how am I personally viewing people who are on these programs or in need of these programs and who are currently complaining because these programs are running out? My call as a believer is going to say, how can I be generous? Because we see this in the book of Acts. Now, this is within the local church. So you could argue exegetically, but I don't even want to do that. Acts 2 is they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. They broke bread together, and they sold property and possessions to take care of one another. Not a call for communism or socialism, but it's a call for taking care of one another when people are in need. You see the Apostle Paul do this in the book of 1 Timothy and other books where he's like, hey, if there's orphans and widows, like, it is your call. In the book of James, Jesus' half-brother says, like, if you do not take care of the poor, like, this is a really big faith issue, not a political issue, faith issue. So we have this call biblically to not rely on the government, but to take it upon ourselves to say, how am I personally being generous and being like Jesus? Like Jesus, he multiplied bread to feed 5,000 people because they were hungry. When the crowds followed him and said, like, please give us more bread, he turned them away because he's like, I'm not here for you to like be dependent upon me. It's about the miracle, not about like a welfare program.
Manna for the day, right?
Manna for the day.
But
I think at the end of the day, we had to think about his policy and posture. It's
good. I love that word about posture. I think out of this whole episode, that's my favorite thing that you brought up right away was the posture. And really that's what we're being watched and looked at. And we've got to be better. We know we're in some fun times here, this chapter of life, but we can do better. We can be better. We can be a voice of reason that brings hope and generosity, not judgment. And we can call it out in our fellow believers too. Honestly, I think we've got to be a little bolder to do that too.
If I said, hey, Wendy, this Sunday at church, I want you to get up on stage and you have 5 minutes to like approach this from a biblical standpoint, like food assistance, let's just go food. We don't have to do immigration. We've already talked about that. What would you say to the people?
Oh, listen, I'm a girl who starts right. You got to get in God's word first. I would say heart check. Have you been in God's scriptures to see what it says about providing and generosity and giving what you have? That's where we got to start. That's where I've got to start with my family, and it goes from there, the ripple effect. And I would say give. If it's been given to you, give. If you have enough, give. And then give more. Like God provides our needs, and we've seen it over and over again. So I would tell the stories of how God's provided in times we didn't know where anything would come from. Provide exactly what we needed when we needed it. And even in times that are hard, like this is a tangent, and poor Justin, he's probably going to be like, stop talking, but our vehicle broke down. We just had a vehicle, broke down, had to get it towed. It was chaotic. And yet see where God provides in the smallest of moments. He provided in a way that got flowers to a wedding that we didn't expect to figure out how. And 3 miles, some relatives lived from my cousin who brought Jeff and fed him, made soup for him. Talk about providing. fed him soup and rolls. And that's who we need to be. We need to be the people who go pick somebody up and then make them a meal and love on them and be like, let's work through this together.
You covered a lot of the compassion side and the generosity side. So I'm in agreement with everything that you just said. So we got to trust God. We also got to be generous. Like if you're in a state of extra and abundance, like give generously to people. And that's what we did as a church. This is what Maddie and I have done in our personal lives. There's been times where she's come home and she's like, sorry, I paid for groceries for another family. It was like $150. I'm like,
Hard check.
Budget.
Right.
But also, you know what, Maddie, that is awesome. And I will go without so that you can do that again. And that's our posture as a family. Now, that said, I want to close this off like the last 5 minutes with, and I don't want this to sound uncompassionate towards people on these
Just
programs.
reverse 5 minutes if it does sound no.
But I want to get to like, why does the Apostle Paul talk about like, hey, you got to provide for your family? And what is the benefits of this? And why is this? So like from a principle standpoint, go back to the book of Genesis when God created the world. He said, 6 days you shall work, you shall labor. On the seventh day you shall rest. So built into how our world functions is you need to be somebody who works and has a job. And of course, there's people with disabilities, all that. I'm speaking in general to the average person who's like healthy, able-bodied, ready to go. You have to be somebody who works. This is like a call towards don't be lazy, don't be slothful, go out and provide for yourself and provide for your family and do whatever it takes to increase. Bible talks a lot about, hey, it's harder for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle, or to get to heaven, the camel to go through the eye of the needle, that whole thing. But it's also okay to get a promotion and make more money. Just always continue to depend on God. But every nation, every community, every family who lives out of a state of like, I'm just going to do what's easiest and I'm going to live on dependence of somebody else to subsidize my lifestyle, it never goes well. And it never leads to blessing or prosperity, not like just spiritually, but like financially. When you have this mindset of living from subsidization, it just doesn't go well. We saw this, if you go all the way back to like the Plymouth settlement versus the Virginia settlement, early American history, like Jamestown had a lot of death, destruction because they had a whole like welfare system that they built into their community. Plymouth Rock, they did it the opposite way where it was like, hey, each man for himself, provide for your own family, and you saw nothing but like blessing and prosperity. So I think just from a general biblical principle, we have to provide for ourselves, not rely on other people. But when we see people are in need, that's when we become generous without judgment and we help our brothers and sisters. We could talk about this for hours on both sides, but I think just to back up, I'll close with there's policy, there's posture. Let's love like Jesus and take care of one another, but also take care of ourselves.
Amen.
There you go.
Let's go.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Justin.